What's up, everybody? It is a cold day in December. Lots of leaves on the ground, even some snow. We got a really good candidate because it is the start of fat tire season, and we got the Nomad from Velotric. Let's go ahead and check it out. This is a cruiser slash adventure bike. A little bit of both. Not a whole lot of cargo, but we'll get into that. Let's jump into the electric stuff because that's where there's a lot of really cool things to talk about. Blah! I think it's called the Nomad one on their site, but they call it Nomad from Velotric. So Velotric has been making some pretty cool looking bikes. They're not all that groundbreaking, but they really do add a lot of fit and finish. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. So we'll just start right here in the middle because why the heck not? Right here is actually a really cool bolstered section in the middle of the frame that houses the controller. So the battery is up here, motor's back there. Controller's right in here, housed inside of that. Now with this, the bike is actually certified by Underwriters Laboratory. So this has a safety rating that very few electric bikes actually have bothered to try and pursue. But in the case of Velotric, they did get that Underwriters Laboratory certification. I'll put that up on the screen so you can see the exact code. But this isn't just some marketing nonsense. They actually went through with it. I went to the Underwriters Laboratory website and I checked it out, and it is super legit. So I'm actually pretty excited to see something new. Something's actually kind of break the mold a little bit. And this definitely does break the mold because this bolstered part of the frame is very different. You would think that it would house like a mid-drive of some kind, but it doesn't. This is actually just for the brains of the operation. And with that, it's got a lot of extra strength there. So yeah. The ground clearance is pretty much the same. I mean, with a bike like this, you're not going to be looking at a whole lot of ground clearance because it's a cruiser. With the battery, this is a 48 volt 15 amp hour battery that is actually fitted right into the down tube. And not only is it totally fitted and flush with that, but it does also match with the color and also on the underside of the battery as well. So it makes it look really, really sleek. And Velotric keeps that going with this front tube up here for the fork. So this is actually pretty well covered up. There's not a whole lot of welding points that you can see over here. It's really well covered. This actually does lend to more of those safety ratings that I was telling you about for waterproofing and everything, because look at the way that the cables come in, and they go right in through all the way down into there to the controller. Of course, some of them go to the battery and then back out into the motor itself. So the motor cable connects back in here, and then it goes underneath the chainstay right there, back up into the controller area right there. So with that, you got a gasket right in there protecting everything. This is really sleek, and you can still access it if you need to. You got a few little bolts right there to take this plate off, and then you can get into the controller if you got to do anything to it. But in my experience, not a whole lot needs to be done with the controller. Up on the front, you have a light that is integrated with the battery pack. So this, let's go ahead and turn that on by pressing the plus button. The light turns on, not too impressive during broad daylight, but this light turns on to light up the path, which is pretty dope. The rear light is actually independent, so this has its own batteries inside of it, and you turn that on just by pressing that there. This comes with the bike. It's not a aftermarket accessory, but it is not integrated integrated into the main battery pack. Let's go ahead and turn this little guy off right here. The display is actually pretty cool. It's a monochrome display, which tells you everything that you need to know, and it does so very clearly. Up here, you got the battery level dead in the center with your miles per hour right up there. Let's go ahead and tilt the bike just a little bit, get that throttle, which, by the way, the throttle, we'll talk about that. You see that speed coming up there? That's a live reading for how fast you're going, and I found it to be really accurate, which is a fantastic thing. It also has kind of your power output and little bars there. Let me go ahead and twitch it a little bit so you can see that. Power output is going up there, so it definitely has some more readouts other than just the speed, and it doesn't follow the speed. It actually has its own metric on it that it's reading. Again, your battery level, this is not all that precise. It just shows you 5 bars on there. Right now we're looking at a pretty good charge. This is your variable display. When you press the power button, that will cycle through a few things. So your total odometer is at 4 miles right now. Average miles per hour, max speed, the time that we've been out. The calorie counter, I'm not sure how accurate that can really be. There's your power output again. So if you want something more precise than just that bar, you can actually see the little burst of power that the motor's putting out. It's not putting out a whole lot right now, but I think because there's no tension on the bike. If I get on it and add some load, okay, there we go. That's going to be a tough thing to film standing up, but it shows you how much power that you're using at that exact moment. Right down here you got pedal assist level 5. I like that it's very simple. Personally, I like a simple display, and this one is exactly that. It doesn't cloud you over with all sorts of stuff that it's reading all at once. It gives you just what you need to know, very clear, even in daylight like we have right now. Looks like the wind is kicking up. I actually think a storm is coming in, and if it starts to snow, that's going to be a lot of fun. I've already been taking it in the snow a little bit. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the reasons why I did that, because this bike is actually a lot of fun and quite versatile. One last thing I wanted to talk about is actually the motor on the electric system. So this is a pretty powerful motor that they have branded powered by Velotric. This thing is a pretty big tank. I was able to use it to get up some pretty steep inclines without a whole lot of momentum. So this is definitely a good pairing for that battery and for that controller system. So moving on to the mechanical system. One of the highlights of the Nomad is the fat tire. So these are 26 by 4 inch fat tire. These current ones are from CST, which is, I think, the Chongsheng tire company, and then BFT. I think you can surmise what that could mean. But these are a pretty standard size for fat tires. The 26 by 4, very popular. They have a lot of air volume in them, so they're really good for comfort. I think that's one of the bigger benefits of having these tires on this bike, is that, yeah, like fat tires are pretty good at getting into some adventures, getting into some sticky situations and getting out of them. They have a lot of traction because they have that wide surface area that can get grip on places that other tires couldn't do. And it's pretty sweet that you can use that to get to all sorts of places. But I would want to remind you that it does take some skill to get in and out of that. I'll put up some footage on the screen so you can see me kind of jumping around and stuff. The reason why I say it takes some skill to do so is because these fat tires have a lot of grip and a lot of traction, which is great, but you yourself have to have the balance both front to back and left to right to be able to navigate this kind of terrain. And especially when you're in the snow, or even honestly when you're in a bunch of leaves, it really benefits you to know the terrain and to look forward for all those little tiny changes in the dips or the jumps or the ramps. Like, you really got to know all of that stuff pretty well, or be in a position to which you can move your body adequately to adjust for all of that. And all of that happens in real time. It happens very, very small and very, very precise. Let's go ahead and get back to the mechanical system, because there's a really sweet upgrade that I want to tell you about that Velotric has put on this bike. This hydraulic disc brake, of course there's another one on the rear. It's not like they only did one. That would be really funny. But they got hydraulic disc brakes on the bike, both front and the rear, and this is a really, really important upgrade. I am a big proponent of hydraulic disc brakes on electric bikes in any fashion that they can be feasible. I really like them because they have a lot of bite onto that disc. So this is the caliper, and this has some hydraulic fluid going up into the handle up there. When you squeeze that, just like the brakes on a car, it pulls these little brake pads together onto the disc. This is a 2-piston hydraulic disc brake, meaning that both pads squeeze in. It's not that one pad squeezes into the other one that's static. No, they both squeeze in on this guy, which is fantastic. And this has a 180 millimeter disc, which means that you can put more stopping power on it for a longer duration. So when you're coming down a steep hill, they will not burn up and lose their bite as a result of the heat getting onto the pad. So this is a really good set of brakes. I really like this. This is one of my favorite things on the bike, really, because it takes a bike that otherwise is set up for kind of a cruising, little bit of adventure package, and it makes it like all come together. Like, it makes it feasible. Now you can actually get into sticky situations and realistically get your way out, especially if you go up something, because you got to come back down. Bikes like this that weigh this much weight that don't have hydraulic disc brakes, I'm very critical of. But Velotric has definitely won me over with that set of brakes, both front and on the rear. So good for you, Velotric. You are doing some great stuff with this bike already, and that's all it takes. It doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a lot. Now the rest of the stuff I'm actually excited about, because this is a bike that I can recommend. This is a bike that I can put some people out on and have a grand old time and not worry about them too much. So let's talk about the weight of the bicycle in total. This bike, as you see it, with the battery in it and everything, weighs a little over 70 pounds. That is a heavy bicycle indeed, but you got to remember that it's an electric bike, number one, And number two, it's a fat tire bike, which means that there's a lot of extra metal when it's a lot wider. You have a lot of strength up here, you have a wider fork, you have, of course, bigger wheels, bigger tires. A lot of weight to carry around. So considering that this is a fat tire bike, it's not that bad on weight. It's not good, but I would not say that it's bad for what it is. And it is very, very comfortable. That's one thing that I wanted to highlight here instead of the adventure aspect. I know I really came to the wrong place to highlight how comfortable instead of adventure, but the comfort aspect is really one of the best parts about this bike, especially the step-through model. You can easily get your foot up and over that to get in there. If you can get up onto a stool, you can probably get your foot through here. Of course, if you put a water bottle right there, then that might compromise that area, but you know, that's up to you really. The bike is super comfortable. The big air volume in these tires kind of acts as a little bit of a suspension, especially when you let some of the pressure out and ride these really low at maybe like, I don't know, 15 or 10 psi. Then you can really get down into the comfort zone for this. Right now I have them beefed up to 30 psi, which is about the max. I did that because I had to get here on the road and I wanted it to be ultra efficient. I suppose that's kind of my moniker when I'm riding bikes, at least for right now. But check out some of this comfort stuff. One of the first things you'll notice is that this seat post tube angles back. So this whole thing goes back, putting the rider weight further back. So they're more sitting upright like at a desk. And then their hands come out to the handlebars, which have a little bit of a sweep to go ahead and meet your hands. That way you're not leaning all of your weight forward to get into it. They rather come to you. The grips also have a little comfort ergonomic trim on the edge, which is really nice. These are kind of like a solid rubber, so they don't have any seams throughout them. Really nice. And with that, you can reach the handlebar brakes, and everything is right here with your controls, your shifter, which we'll get into that in a little bit, bell up there, and then your electronic controls on the left side with your pedal assist control, your power button, and the throttle, which is a lot of fun. All of this is right here, right at your hands, ready to go. The display itself is right in the middle, so you don't have to reach over into the middle to control the display. You got it all right here on the remote switch. Really sweet stuff. One thing I did notice is about the stem. This stem, which looks right here, this guy is actually pretty static. There's not a whole lot of options on this thing. Sometimes you can get a stem that can angle up or down. With this guy, it's the way it is. And also it's risen up on these two risers here. So this is probably the highest that you're gonna get these handlebars without going to a bike shop and getting some other parts. Which, by the way, any local bike shop should have some parts to change this whole thing out if you wanted to adjust it. With that adjustment, you could get the handlebars up a little bit higher, perhaps even a little bit closer if you wanted to. The seat post is not really going to change much because that angle is pretty much set. Speaking of the frame, it kind of comes into here to meet in with the motor mount pretty well. I mean, look at this. It's got a nice aesthetic to that line here. A lot of times you see a triangle just kind of come in, but in this case they made it more of a, actually like a literal rhombus shape. They got all of that in here with the motor mount, and the mount itself is black. Let's go ahead and remove this little cap. You can see that little bolt right there, and then the mount itself is black that it goes into. So that's pretty cool, the way that they have that look kind of fitting together. It's really nice because it makes the whole entire bike, like little details like this, really make the bike look a lot better. While we're back here, we'll go ahead and talk about the gearing and also the derailleur. So this bike is a single speed up in the front, which is very normal for electric bikes, even the nice ones. And in the back, this guy is a Shimano Altus 7-speed derailleur. So this guy's pretty sweet. I rock an Altus on my personal bike, and the gearing on this thing is not all that wide. So you're not going to be able to climb a telephone pole with this kind of a gearing. Your big, huge gear in the back is not terribly tall, and in the bottom I'm pretty sure you're rocking, is that an 11 or a 14? So I actually stopped for a minute to count this gearing. This is a 13 by 34. I had to count that probably 5 or 6 times by now, each tooth one by one, because normally I see 11 for the smallest cog. Sometimes I see 12 or 14. 14 is a really common one for the freewheels, but in this case it's a 13. So this is a 13 tooth in the bottom and 34 up on the top. So this is not a terribly wide gear range. Like I said, you're not going to be able to climb a telephone pole with this tall one, and you're not going to hit super fast speeds using the mechanical gearing. And to be honest, the electric system overpasses the mechanical system on the flat pretty much like in between level 2 and 3 pedal assist. So if you're at a level 2 or 3 pedal assist and you're pedaling along, the motor is going to be going faster than what you could catch up with using the smallest cog. So clearly this bike is made for kind of low impact kind of riding. You're not going to be going super fast, you're not going to be going super steep, and that's okay. That's a perfectly good use for this. So let's go ahead and jump on the bike, take it for a spin, and then we'll go back to the studio and have a few more final words. Alright, now that we're cozy warm again, let's go ahead and cover some of the uncovered ground. After riding the bike a little bit more in adverse weather, I really appreciated it more than I did before. Velotric says on their site that this is the most versatile adventure bike ever. It's a pretty bold claim, but I do believe that this bike is more capable than it looks. The balance was actually very predictable, and despite the comfort points, I felt like I had really good control. I was pleasantly surprised. The Nomad comes in a few colors, which is fantastic, and they also have color match batteries, which is also fantastic. MSRP on the bike is $1,599, but as I'm making this video, it's actually on sale. That's a pretty good price for everything that you're getting here. So, who would I recommend this bike to? Well, if you want something that is focused on off-road adventure, then I'd probably point you in a different direction. The Nomad is fine for light off-road and predictable terrain, but if you go into some crazy trails, hopefully you have some crazy skill to back that up. I would recommend the Nomad first and foremost if you're looking for a comfortable cruiser with secret powers behind the curtain. It's powerful, fun, it's easy to use, and it looks incredible. If the adventure aspect appeals to you, that's perfectly fine if you have a wild streak in your imagination. For most electric bike riders, this bike is a solid win. So what do you guys think of the Nomad from Velotric? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm Mikey for Blue Monkey Bicycles, and I will see you on later.